Alright, so in the last episode I talked about remote functions. If you don't understand that, please let me know. This one I'm going to be making a data store because people keep asking for it, and it's about time I made a data store video. And I'm pretty sure it ties in with basics because we've learned everything we need to know to make a data store. So I'm going to actually set up player stats in this episode 2. So I'm just going to create a simple script that actually I'm going to use module script as well actually. So I'm going to call this module setup in this module, or the script main. So the main is the main thing, right? It's the main server script we're using to call the module. And the module, of course, is a empty module, right? So I'm going to call this module. You know how modules work. They're like big tables. Module local data store equals table. And then we return the data store like that. Now you need two things to get the data store. You need service. You need the data store service, and you need the name of the data store. So I'm going to create a data store. I'm going to get the data store service. Equals game gets service, data store service. And then I am also going to get the store name. My store name is going to be YouTube data store. So to do that, you do store name equals data store service get ordered data store, get ordered data store, or get data store, as we can see right here, property instance get data store, and I'm going to name that YouTube data store. And now we have ourselves a data store. We have it initialized and we know what the data store is used for. Good. Now we need to go to settings, permissions, options, HTTP requests on, and enable Studio access to API services. Save. Now we can use data stores. I'm going to create a function called data store dot join, and then I'm going to create another function called data store dot leave. Now, as we talked about modules, you can pass in parameters, arguments, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to pass in the player because the only thing we need is a player, right? So for both of these, that's the player. Now in this script, I'm actually going to get the players, game.players.local, or game.players. Then I'm going to connect that to a player added function. So players.player added connect it to a function, and that will return the player that just joined. Now I am going to require our data store. So require game.serverScript service dot setup, right? So now we got the module set up. Now when the player joins, we obviously have to do data store dot join, right? And we feed in the player, just like that. Now we have the function connected to the module. Now whatever I put in the module script in that function, it will do. If you don't understand that, please go back to my module video. It is very useful and explains exactly what this means. Also, if you don't understand how functions work, go back to my functions video. Now players.player added connect function to make another one for when the player leaves, right? Player, instead of player added though, we have to do player removing. Player removing. I spelled that wrong. Player removing. Connect, and then the function. Now this also returns the player and the player name. That did it, so we can just easily get the player. Now we're going to do players. Nope, we're not going to do players. We're going to do data store just like the other one and leave. And then we're going to pass in the argument player. This script is now done. So what we did was we got the players, we got our module we created for the data store. We have a function that whenever the player joins, player added, it connects it to a function and it returns player. We went to the module and we called the join function for the player, and then whenever the player leaves, it connects it to a function that returns player, and we call it the data store leave function. Leave right here and join right here. That's what it's calling. Now we need to create data for the player, right? So we're going to do local stats equals instance.new folder inside of the player. Stats.name has to be lowercase leader stats. It has to be lowercase leader stats. It cannot be uppercase. It has to be lowercase. Then we're going to do local money equals instance.new number value inside of stats. This will save the value, right? That would be the value we're going to save. The money.name, it will equal money. So now we have money. Now we have leader stats. Let's actually run the game and see what happens. Now if we notice, hey, player has money. Good, that works. Right? Well, what if I want to actually save the data? That's really easy, actually. I am going to create a table. It's local save stats. If you don't know what tables are, I have a video on tables. And I'm going to run a for loop. If you don't know how for loops work, please watch my for loops video. For loop, for index, values, and I pairs, stats, get children. We have to get the children of this folder, right? Right here, we have to get the children instance of this folder, so it would get the money and whatever else is in there. Do table.insert. This inserts the object into a table. So insert save stats, number of save stats plus 1, so it adds to whatever number of the table is. So if the position in the table is 1, then it would add to 2, so on. And then we're going to do the values.name and then the values.value. So now we have it in a table. Now we need to actually save it. So we're going to do the store name, set async, or get I lied, actually. This is for the leave function. Ooh, man, that's awkward. Okay. We have to do this and here. Player.stats, get children. This will save the stuff. Then we have to do store name set async, and then the player.user ID, save stats, and then the table. So save stats. And then there we go. Now we're going to do get async, right? We have to get async. Now we notice we have this. So how am I going to do that? Well, you have to actually assign the table. This may look really confusing. It's really not confusing, I promise. So we have to do store get async, right? And then we do player the user ID, and then the save stats right here. Like we have to be the same, and then save stats. If this doesn't make sense to you, it's simply basically doing table.insert for the objects that was saved here. It's getting this stuff. Then we're gonna have to do a for loop for index values and I pairs, so it ignores no values. Save stats, do. And then we're going to do stats, and then we remember how we did the string thing. We have to do values dot 1 dot value equals values dot 2, and then we're done. Now if we run the program, we notice if we run the script, we notice it errors because there's no data saved in the table. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change my money to some ridiculously small number. Yeah, that much. Perfect. Now we notice I have 124,000. Now when I leave, and if I rejoin, it says stats not available per player, right? That is because I decided to spell it wrong, and now I look like I don't know how to program. It's actually leader stats. So now we're going to do that, and now it's very simple. All we got to do is change the money, go to leader stats, change the money, change it to that, and leave. Now when we leave, we notice that it probably didn't save because Studio does that sometimes. It's kind of annoying. But if it did save, yeah, now we have money. See, we we have $441.2 billion. Now, if I leave again, we'll still have the same amount because the data saved in Roblox data stores. Same amount. So let me explain what this does one more time, just to recap. I got the data store service. I got the name of the data store. I created a function when the player joins. It calls this. It creates a table called save stats, a local variable save stats, which is a table, an array. Then I created a stats folder called leader stats. Then I put money inside of that stats folder and called it money. And then I got the async I got the values of the table that was saved when the player left. So when the player left, I simply just created a local table, and I created a for loop that got everything inside of the stats folder. So like it would get everything. If I added like 20 more values in there, it would get all those values and save them in individual tables. It would save them by the name, and it would also save the value in a dictionary. And then once you simply just set story sync for the save stat table, and when the player joins, it would reload their stats. That is how you make a data store. If you have any questions, message me on Roblox or join the help Discord server in the description. I will see you in the next episode.